Go ahead, sir.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I, Bharat Jaiswal, Regional Director, ASSOCHAM. Take this opportunity on behalf of ASSOCHAM to welcome you all in this eve of Knowledge Management Virtual Meet on Aviation, Revival and Way Forward. The civil aviation industry in India has emerged as one of the fastest growing industries in the country. During the last 3 years, India has become the third largest domestic aviation market in the world and is expected to overtake UK to become the third largest air passenger market by 2024. The aviation sector in India contributes $72 billion to GDP. India has 464 airports and airstrips, of which 125 airports are owned by Airport Authority of India. These 125 Airport Authority of India's airport manage closes to 78% of domestic passenger tariffs and 22% of international passenger tariffs. The COVID-19 pandemic has hit this sector with force and it needs revival. There has been an overall loss of $3.3 billion to $3.6 billion that has been incurred by the Indian aviation sector, which includes airports, airlines, ground handling agencies during the period of April to June 2020. The aviation sector needs revival and new reform policies which is required. ASSOCHAM being a responsible chamber, keeping this view, ASSOCHAM is organizing knowledge management virtual meet on aviation revival and way forward. Today, we are going to have a healthy discussion on this subject. We have with us a group of experts. Along with us, we have today Dr. Sumit Susilan, Chairman ASSOCHAM Jharkhand State Skill Development Council and Chairman International Institute of Aviation Private Limited. Mr. Nipendra Singh, Industry Principal Aerospace and Defense, Frost & Sullivan, Global India. Mr. Vijay Kumar Singh, Marketing Director, SAP India Technologies Private Limited. Mr. Peter Kubotar, Vice President of Customer Affairs, Aeron. Mr. Sampath Kumaran, Vice President and Head Helicopters, Adani Group. Mr. Anantha Raman, CEO, Air Deccan. Mr. Simran Singh, Chief Executive Officer, Star Air. The moderator of the session is Mr. Nipendra Singh. He is a business consultant with Frost & Sullivan for Aerospace and Defense. He is an engineer graduate with Masters in Business Administration. Has diversified experience in banking, airline, airport, and business consulting. His opinions are a regular feature in national as well as international media house that includes Returns, Economic Times, Business Standards, The Hindu, and many more. On behalf of ASSOCHAM, I would also like to welcome my delegates who have joined us from every hook and corner of the country. I would also like to welcome my friends from print and electronic media. With all this hope that this knowledge management virtual meet will be a fruitful one, I wish this webinar a good luck and now request once to Mr. Nipendra Singh to take it forward from here. Over to you, Mr. Singh.
Thanks, Bharat. Good morning to the eminent panelists, delegates, audience, and the ASSOCHAM for organizing this webinar to discuss the aviation revival and way forward. And that is what our speakers would be zeroing on during this webinar today. But before we start, I would like to put forward the facts and reasons so as to why this webinar is the need of the day. Why aviation and how revival of aviation is a key spoke for driving the economy and the engines of business for each and every single country around the world. As Bharat have said and have detailed the aspect which has happened as a impact of COVID in the Indian scenario, I would like to put forward some of the facts related to the global aviation, because we as an Indian aviation are not an isolated one when we talk about the aviation. So let's people know that aviation industry supports close to 2.7 trillion, that is 3.6% of the world GDP. If aviation were a country, it would rank close to 20th in size of the GDP. The aviation market is expected to grow significantly in the coming decades. By 2036, IATA predicts that it's close to support 97.8 million jobs and contribute close to 5.7 trillion to the global economy. Aviation industry supports close to 65.5 million jobs around the world. Some of these roles are within the industry, at airports, for airlines, and in civil aerospace and air navigation services, while other jobs are also there, which are supported by the economic activity that the air travel create. Such importance aviation holds in the today's economy. To start with, the topics which we would be covering today are aviation revival and way forward, regional connectivity outlook as per the UDAN initiative, which has been initiated by Government of India very recently. The skill and development is also one of the key initiatives by the Government of India in the recent past, and the trends that will decide the future course of Indian aviation. I will welcome all our guest speakers today, and I'll take this opportunity to introduce them once again to you all, for all the delegates and the audience. Our first analyst is Dr. Sumit Sushilan. He has an honorary doctorate in aviation, featured among the list of top 100 celebrities in Forbes India magazine 2018. A prestigious author, a keynote speaker for Ministry of Civil Aviation events on skill development, a member of Bureau of Indian Standard for Drone UAV, Government of India, recipient of several awards. To name a few would be India Leadership Award, Asia Pacific Excellence Award, Mahatma Gandhi Gaurav Samman, and many more. Welcome, Mr. Sushilan, to this forum, and we are happy to know your feedbacks upon the topics which we'll be discussing in the next few hours. Our next panelist is Mr. Sampath Kumaran. He's Vice President and Head Helicopters UAV at Adani Group in Aerospace and Defense. He has an expertise of close to 26 years of extensive experience in handling business operation and diversified business experience, from greenfield aerospace park setup, aircraft business, jet manufacturing, to handling various business segments, including aerospace and defense research and development. He's also a fellow of Institution of Engineers India. His work on prevention of biofueling in seawater desalination got published in Nuclear World publication and international publication, which has been widely appreciated. Thanks, Mr. Sampath Sukumaran, for being a part of this forum. Our next panelist is Mr. Varun Vijay Singh. He's a management graduate from IE Business School, close to 13 years of experience in aerospace and defense, an entrepreneur, co-founder of India's first commercial skydiving drop zone, Sky High, currently serving as Director Marketing at Saab India, the man who positioned Saab with the Southeast Asia as a leader of new technologies in the civil aviation industry. Welcome, Mr. Varun. Our next panelist is Mr. Peter Kabuter. He is an ex-vice president at Airbus Pro Sky with around 20 years of experience in the aerospace sector, currently serving as vice president in Aerion, which manufactures, deploys, and operates global aircraft tracking and surveillance. Welcome, Mr. Peter. Our next panelist in the row is Mr. Anantha Ramana. He is business head and group CEO, Deccan Charter, a business head with close to 20 years of experience in aviation, has held various roles of heads of finance, marketing, operations, and maintenance, and was part of Air Deccan Cargo in the recent past. Welcome, Mr. Ramana. And our last panelist is Mr. Simran Singh Tawana. He is the Chief Executive Officer at Star Air, an engineer, a professional pilot, a philanthropist, recently selected as India's most trusted CEO 2020. He is one of the first employees of Star Air, which is also the first airline in Asia be operationally profitable within 9 months of starting the operation, and its dynamic leadership. Welcome, Mr. Tawana. So that's about the panelists which we have. As we have gone through it through the whole of the experience of our panelists, we can see that the aerospace and defense holds a prime priority in terms of experience of our panelists, and all of them are close to more than 10 plus years of experience and have good industry expertise and a good name in the industry. Great to see the enthusiasm we are receiving in terms of questions from our audience on aviation. Thank you all for this. And in due course of time, what I'll try is to cover all of our questions, all of the questions of the audience which are there with the panelists. Please excuse me if in case I miss out on some of them due to limited time on this webinar, but you can be rest assured that all your queries will definitely be addressed in a most efficient way. And with this, in interest of time, I'd like to put forward the first question, which has come to Dr. Sumit Sushilan. So, Dr. Sushilan, the first question which we have received is that do airlines give priority to the skill-based training institute designated by NCDC, Ministry of Skill Development? Your view on this would be appreciated.
Okay, thanks for giving the platform to speak. Okay, the question which is coming from the public saying, do the aviation industry, like airlines, give the priority to the NSDC approved training centers? Aware about this part of training just by the Ministry of Skill Development in the aerospace department. So now, recently we had formed skill sectors called Aerospace and Aviation Sector Skill Council. So this is a very new council formed under the Ministry of Ministry of Skill Development, and Ministry of Civil Aviation is keeping a close eye, expecting that in future more and more airline companies will start recruiting the skilled people from the NSDC approved, because a lot of funds are allotted by the Ministry of Skill Development in these segments.
Okay, IATA also has a very significant presence in this sector. So how do you see that growing up with in parallel to NCDC?
Okay, in India right now we have for the trainings by ITA or NSDC. If we see international market, so overseas like Emirates, Qatar Airways, they all give a priority to do the recruitment from ITA authorized training centers or authorized training schools. But in India, we are still very new for these concepts. Right now, the recruitments are happening only through the open market. Because of that, the staff which are getting recruited in the industry, they don't stick with the company for very long time, because their mindsets is to switch the job after getting few years of experience. So expecting that the airlines will come up will and opt for recruiting professional people from ITA authorized training centers or from NSDC approved training institutes.
Okay, and just a follow-up question to that: do the industry gives priority to the aviation trained institutes, students like engineering and medical?
So far, no, they are not giving priority. There are some experience, like bad experience happened by the airlines, like SpiceJet. They had completely blacklisted engineering students in customer service segments. So slowly, I wish these segments can be operated by the other airlines also, so that the priority will be given to the people who want to get into aviation industry after taking the skill-based trainings from the training institutes affiliated by the government of India.
Good. My last question would be how has been the response in the last 1 to 2 years with the skill development initiative taken by Government of India? Your views on that, and probably in what direction the this particular sector is growing in terms of trainings.
Okay, the government of Mr. Nikhil, can you please repeat the question? I just missed the question again. I think the question
my question was, how do you see this training and training initiative by Government of India has done in the last 1 to 2 years? Has it been satisfactory, or there is still a lot to do?
Yeah, because of the recruitment of the new Joint Secretary in the Ministry of Civil Aviation, Mr. Amber Dubey, there's a new committee had formed to give a skill-based training in aviation. So the skill training under Ministry of Civil Aviation also, there's a committee had formed, and they are now lining up the candidates for. We are hoping that in a year or so, we will be having all the skill trained people in the industry.
Oh, that's a good news to see. So as I can see, there is good enthusiasm coming in terms of question which I'm receiving. That's why my count of question is just increasing. So, but then what I request all of you to just be more precise so that we can manage this thing in view of time. Thank you, Mr. Sushilan, for your responses and for the industry feedback which you have given. Our next question has come to Mr. Sampath Kumaran, which is, what's the impact of aviation turbine fuel high charges on the aviation sector? Because as we see that in India, the tax structure is like that ATF becomes the highest component of cost for the airline cost operations. So how do you see it is growing, and what government support do you expect in this particular thing? Mr. Sampath, the question is for you, so if you can answer this.
Sir, you are on mute. Please unmute yourself.
Mr. Sampath, you are on mute, I believe.
In fact, if you look at the fuel component in the aviation, about 45% of the cost goes to the fuel. Unfortunately, in fact, the Indian airlines were lucky. Of course, it's global phenomena, of course. The oil prices were too low in the market. And for the past 3 years or so, every airlines was able to survive and made money, mainly because of the fuel component. The price of fuel was so low, and that has really helped them to survive in the market for all the last 3-4 years.
Yeah. But do you see that is this the scenario going forward too, or do you foresee any rise in the fuel prices in the coming years, possibly once the traffic revives?
Well, it is, yeah. Well, it is very difficult to predict what the fuel prices would be. It all depends on the consumption pattern and also the international, the markets. But it is expected that in the short term, the airlines are going to benefit because the price is under control. But it all depends on the geopolitical situations and also how the oil producing nations behaving in the future. But as of now, in short term, definitely the airlines are going to benefit because of the low pricing.
Yeah. So as I understand that ETF component is a significant component, and which holds approximately half the cost of the operation of the airlines operating in India. And I believe this structure is not same across the region, which is close to globally. This percentage is close to 25 to 30%. But in India, due to the tax structure and the distribution between the center and the state taxes is so high that it reaches close to 45%, yeah. And that becomes a problem for the airline to manage their profitability. Good to know information from you, Dr. Sampath, Mr. Sampath, and thank you for the information. Our next question is, so it is for Mr. Ramana. Mr. Ramana, the question which has come from the audience is that the cargo is gradually repositioning itself in post-COVID area. Your view on the policy support required from the regulator, because it is considered to be one of the key pillars for setting the trend or course for this particular thing.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks everybody. Thanks ASSOCHAM calling me in. I just want to address the one question before I answer this question. Can I say something about the ATF fuel price, which Mr. Sampath Kumaran has said something, and you had made a clarification on that. See, I think the key component, what you are talking about and what Mr. Sampath Kumar was talking about, is the 15% of the cost of operations is going for taxes. The idea the GST Council has started mooting out in the last few sessions is whether we can look for the GST or tax that is paying for the ATF. I think if the government and the GST Council allows that the cost will become a pass on and we will become more competitive to the world. Like what Mr. Sampath said, we can't control the prices of the fuel because India is fuel deficient, okay, and it is importing fuel. But the government should consider looking at giving the GST credits back to on fuel purchases. That will become very interesting uh, idea to look at it. Okay. Now coming back to the cargo. See, the cargo business is actually, if you look at the industrial average for the last 40, 50 years, be it FedEx or Blue Dart in India or UPS or DHL, it's always the growth is linked to the GDP. So normally when we look at the cargo market, we look at a benchmark to the GDP, it's normally grows 2 times the GDP. Fortunately, what happened in India, there is no cargo airline in India other than Blue Dart. All the cargo are being moved, be it for Amazon or be it for Flipkart or be it for the post office, is moved through the belly space of the airlines. Unlike US where you have almost 400 aircrafts doing only cargo. In India, we have only 5 aircraft which is doing cargo. Now, they say that they do around 300 tons every night in a cargo. Okay. Having said that, the current situation has not changed anything. The cargo movements are happening. Actually, if you see the last report from Blue Dart, the lot of traffic potential was there. But unfortunately, what is happening is the customs is becoming a blockade for the international cargo movement. For domestic cargo movement, again, the problem is the clearance. The GHA, like you take an example, in the last few months, I've been hearing in Chennai, the entire the ground handling support has been stopped because of the COVID situation. So the problem of the growth in cargo is highly depends on the state legislation on the current pandemic situation, whether they are having a lockdown or a non-lockdown. If I have to move something from, say, Calcutta to, we don't know what's going to happen in Bangalore, whether the shipment is going to be cleared or not. So the growth has not happened the way we were all predicting. Yes, there were a lot of movements that happened because of the government initiative from Boeing the medical and the PPE equipments. But honestly speaking, international cargo, I can see, at least in Bangalore, where I'm from, okay, you have a huge stagnation of the 28th July, I had got some material from US which has not yet been cleared. So it is a big challenge because the ecosystem has not opened up. Probably there are cargoes to move, but the ecosystem is not still not making it conducive to grow. So that's my take on it.
So, as you talked about Bangalore, as per my knowledge, what Bangalore has a dedicated cargo infrastructure in place to serve the cargo, and there are a couple of initiatives which has been taken in the recent past related to the cargo sector. One is AI SATs have opened a pool port, and the cargo team at Bangalore Airport has ensured a service in which the custom clearance could be done at the remote location and the cargo could be managed much efficiently at the airport. So do you see that with the new with the airlines like SpiceJet and possibly Indigo also sparing some of the aircraft for the dedicated for the cargo, do you see this industry to be growing at a faster pace in the coming years, or do you see that it will do you foresee that it may be a stagnation which can come once the passenger traffic revives?
See, I think there is a huge potential for cargo in India. Okay, now what do you mean by cargo? Is it an express cargo or a general cargo? See, the India currently, if you look at the delivery chain of the various distribution chains with models we are looking at, be it e-commerce or be it the so-called the shops where like Big Bazaar and all these things. The predominantly movement of the cargo is through trucks and through train route. So the rail route and the truck route are costing, say, something around 2 rupees a kg. Whereas when it goes to your air cargo, it's 20 rupees a kg. So you can't expect onions and potatoes to move by air cargo. Whereas in most of the foreign countries or the international market, if you see, when India imported onions from, so they were paying almost $1.25 per kg of onion, okay, which you and me can't afford it, on a long-term basis. See, the value chain and the relative usage of the air cargo has to change, because with the day definite delivery or time definite delivery via Amazon, Flipkart, that's what is going to grow the cargo movement. So it's a question of how often you take the service. Okay, I want something tomorrow. I want to buy a mobile. I want it to come at 9 o'clock in the morning. Then you're ready to pay the $1.25 on that. Whereas most of the time you don't do that. Okay, it's a question of demand and supply. I would say there's a huge potential, but it's going to take some more time and some more hard work to bring it in. Because if you see last 40 years, there has been only one cargo company in India, and this is the first time Spice is looking at the cargo market. Okay, and with the and this is an opportunity with the passengers airline or doing only a minimal number of flights, so the belly space is being constrained. So yes, we should evolve into a cargo methodology, cargo method, which the government has started thinking about it. And what I remember last time, the ministry was talking about a cargo type of a project, because in the first two Udan scheme, cargo was not included. Whereas in this three, I think they had started using it. Because see, it's a question of how do I get, see, since you guys are from Chhattisgarh, how do I send something to, say, Ambikapur overnight? Can I ever think of it? I can't. So yes, there is a potential, and cargo normally grows at the rate of 2 times the GDP.
That's a good insight. And what I have understood from the industry is that cargo is a bright indicator where the passenger movement is going to start in the near future. Because once the cargo movement is started, it becomes very easy for the airlines and the airport to gauge that from where is the demand coming and how is the demand going to develop over the period of time. As you rightly said, that Government of India initiative related to the cargo as well as the UAV schemes in the recent 1 to 2 years has been there. But then cargo focus has all of a sudden come into picture in the last 6 months. And airlines to whom we spoke with in the recent past have said that it is one of the medium through which they are planning to diversify their business and de-risk their overall risk in the business. Because with the pandemic in place and the huge drop in the passenger traffic, cargo was one of the only savior for the airlines to manage their cost of operations. So that's probably in 100% in lines what you have mentioned in terms of example, that how will the cargo evolve in the coming years despite the passenger traffic getting back to the original one of 2019 levels. Thank you, Mr. Ramana. Anything else you want to throw some light on the industry, how it is going to shape in future, cargo or passenger? If anything is there, we'd be happy to hear from you.
See, I'm just basically, when you guys put in the discussion points as revival and the way forward for the airline industry, I was more talking from the commercial industry perspective. While the commercial industry is a key for all the ancillary units, like the ground handling agents or the MRO activity, or be it a reservation system, as well as the people traveling, a lot of businesses. Okay, see, there are a few factors which we need to really look into it when we are looking at the revival and their way forward. Okay, so we just got the results from the or the data from the Airport Authority of India and the DGCA last month about the traffic of last month. So it looks like last month there were around 21 million tickets that has been sold, as compared to 120 million normally being sold in the month of July 2020. Okay, I'm talking about 20 versus 19. So the issue here is there's a very clear indication that the number of people traveling are being brought down, maybe because of the number of flights being operated is less. Now look at a scenario. Okay, first scenario is basically what makes me to think about revival, what makes me to think about the way forward. Okay, the first thing I need a clarity is how the states are going to review the current situation. So is see, because I do transport of lot of private individuals. The most of time it get cancelled basically because of two reasons. One is that okay, guy want to say start from Chennai and want to go to Bombay. The last minute he comes to know through his sources that Bombay is being, you have to be going on a 14-day quarantine. So the minute he comes to know that the uncertainty happens, see the people are not ready to travel because of these type of uncertainty between states. Now, Airport Authority has come back with certain guidelines last month saying that what's happening in each of the states. But what we need more from the government is a clarity, a centralized policy, at least for the air travel during this period, giving comfort to the passengers, or do a certain type of a level of a sort of a brand building type of thing you need to do, okay, to enable, because traveling by a bus or a train is not a solution today. Today, if you see the entire people who had been traveling on a first class or a second class train, will 100% will go into your airline. So capping the fare or creating a model in such a way that only 33% fly, all these things has to be removed. The government should give a clear indication. Anybody comes on travel by air, they will be provided a sort of testing be done, and they will be released, no quarantining, nothing. So this type of confidence building has to be done by the government when it comes to air travel. That's the first point. The second point is it's more for the airline. Okay, I'm just talking about industrial leadership start thinking in that way. What I'm saying is, see, the airline industry had never served what you call as a customer centric approach, because it's always the airline as we speak, or as I see, is that he enters the aircraft, he is my customer. When he is in the airport, he is a customer of the airport. When he is outside, he is on his own. So the airline should start looking at giving more preference to the customer from the time he leaves the offer. Sorry, leave the point of origin to the destination. So how this can be done? They can be provided with a bus which can drop them off, which is sanitized. You know what I'm talking about, okay? I'm just talking about look at the value chain from start to end. That's my second point. The third point, what I would talk about is basically the routes, the network, and the way you want to evolve yourselves. Because see, today, unfortunately, what happened is we all know that the top 10 airports constitute maximum number of traffic in India, and everybody wants to only operate that. So at least those trunk routes. Let's say we are sometime in 80s, 90s, and we look at only the trunk routes, how effectively you can control those trunk routes. So don't spread out like somebody started saying that India got 400 airports and 120 are operating. We know of that only 10 are really operational, and just focus on it. Just focus, do a see, because today the last point which I'm going to talk about is cost. The cash is the king today. So today, how do you preserve cash? Because see, my cost of retaining the aircraft, see, if you look at when we talked about ATF, we said 45% constitute the cost of fuel. That is at the operations. What happens when the aircraft is grounded? What is that 40%, 45% to 50% constitute of? It's a fixed cost. It's a people cost and the maintenance cost of the aircraft. So there is to open up only the trunk routes and make it work. That becomes a model for you to revive the other airports. Don't try to spread out too much. Just focus. See, that's exactly what SpiceJet started doing at the time of it being borrowed by the current management. They stopped all other routes and started focusing on the trunk routes. Because see, we are expecting a V to U-shaped recovery in the airline industry. Why do we say a V-shaped? Is because the minute the customer gets a confidence to fly, tomorrow it may reach 21 million, may reach immediately 120 million. Because everybody wants to fly, everybody wants to travel, but unfortunately, because of the current situation of not getting clarity and safety, that is what is creating the problem. The fifth point which I talked about is, which I briefly talked about, is the cost, which everybody has to be bothered about. Being an airline, already almost all the airlines are in a loss situation, and the last two results that has come out, which is Indigo making a 2,800 crores loss in the last quarter, and Spice doing some 900 crore loss till March 2020. That has given a clear indication that the going forward is not going to be as easy as possible. That's where the 6th point comes, which is the investor and the bankers, the financial sector, what you call it as. Okay, how do a owner look at an airline? Okay, is it a good money after a bad money, or is it a good money after a good money? So the key reason why investor may be shying away is basically because of the uncertainty of the last 4 factors. So these are the few drivers that's going to actually create a difference to the way forward. Revival, again, we have to see how the industry revives based on the investors' interest. And one good thing that's going on right now is the Air India disinvestment, which it looks like going on its own way of revival. And if you can see, Vistara is adding 787s, which shows that there is a good potential for international travel. Okay, yes, that is all there. But what about India? How Indian market is going to evolve? Like somebody talked about regional connectivity. See, we know what happened to regional connectivity, because I was very part and and we were not able to sustain. And Mr. Simran is here. He talked a bit more on it. Okay, so we have challenges. And what we read in the morning newspaper is that Airport Authority of India is going to raise money because it is unable to fund itself. What I'm saying is, when you talk about the revival, all these 5 factors or 6 factors which I talked about, or probably there may be some more you can discuss, has to be looked at it. Yes, we have a good possibility of a B to U-shaped recovery rather than a L-shaped recovery, because the people are inching to travel. Yeah. So I started the topic as fasten your seat belt, okay, because lights are on. Fasten the seat lights are on. Okay.
Interesting insights. So good one. So what I'm seeing is that the question is coming for Mr. Varun Vijay Singh. Mr. Varun Vijay Singh, we'd just like you to throw some light on what do you think on the revival and the way forward for the aviation sector, as well as for the regional connectivity you want to speak with. Then I'll be jumping on straight away questions to you. But then your views on the revival would be pretty much helpful for us.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Varun Vijay Singh. For who you don't know me, I'm a director at Saab AB. I look after the aerospace, civil aviation sector in India. The regional connectivity is a very, a close to heart topic for Saab, and we have been looking at solving this problem in Sweden, actually, because Sweden is a country which is about 2,000 kilometers from north to south and very sparsely populated. So they had to figure out a way to solve the connectivity problems. So what happened was Saab, their ANS.
I think there was an internet problem. Right.
I'm sorry, should I continue?
No, yeah, please. Mr. Sampath Kumaran, can you please put your audio on mute so that the other panelists could just contribute in?
So yes, as I was saying, in Sweden, being a long and a sparsely populated country, they had to solve the regional connectivity problems. So Saab and LFE came together and came out with a cost-effective way of connecting all small airports as well as far-flung airports. So in the north, in Sweden, you have snow-covered mountains all the time, but we have still managed to build airports there and managed to get trade, tourism, business flowing from the center to all parts of Sweden. And this is done through technology that we've invented, specifically something called the remote tower, which I won't bore you into the details, but it's basically controlling an airport from anywhere in the country
to another place. And this really opened up Sweden as a country, because airports could be open more at more times, and people who were thinking about that they were too far away from the capital, which is Stockholm, completely changed. This revived a lot in terms of the economy for the north of Sweden as well as the hinterland, and we see the same thing in India. If you see in the northeast as well as places in J&K, even in the south, there are a lot of infrastructure issues, and last mile connectivity does not exist. I mean, we still in India have so much potential and untapped resources all over the country that a pandemic like COVID would have not affected us if we were better connected and a country which did not rely on aviation from abroad. So I mean, going forward, at least in the next few years, what I see is regional airlines playing a more important role in boosting economy and international airlines. I mean, the tourism and the trade coming in will take its time. So we as SAB want to promote regional connectivity, and in terms with the regional connectivity scheme, the UDAN scheme, our solutions as well as our partners here, we see that this should be a push to make it happen as soon as possible.
So you talked about the infrastructure constraints which are there with India, particularly if I can see. So may I ask you to throw some light upon what infrastructure requirements you're stating in terms of improving the regional connectivity?
So in India, at least, there are a lot of plans for a lot of regional airports. There are some brownfield airports as well, and they are mostly lying unused. And the reason for that is it's very basic. Even the roads leading up to the airport are unserviceable. You can't get heavy machinery to make a road there. So even getting to the airport is difficult. Then on top of that, then you have problem with power. You have problem with internet. You have air traffic controllers who don't want to be based in, let's say, the outskirts of Manipur if we were to build an airport there. And that is the sad part. We as a country concentrate so much of our infrastructure investments into our major airports that these smaller airports just get left behind. And if we started actually providing a better investment model and putting in more money and resources at these places, I think we would prosper and be able to ward off pandemics like COVID and be able to recover better out of it.
So I believe my next question would be I'll be repeating the question to Mr. Simran also, and Mr. Simran, just be ready because there are a couple good amount of questions which are coming for you. So because from the airline, it is a big interest from the people. So, but then before I reach to you, Mr. Simran, I'll be just finishing with Mr. Varun on a few one or two more questions which are coming from the delegates. The one is that as we can see that due to the pandemic, the big carriers have been have accepted that they are incurring good amount of losses. I'm talking particularly about the listed airlines, Indigo and SpiceJet, who have declared that. Possibly Goer also is in the same league, and all the non-listed carriers also. But then if we see the impact of the same, if it is at such a high level to the established carrier, the legacy carriers, it would be even more on the carriers which have recently started, and the carriers specifically who have the exposure which is just regional and not pan-India. So for them to minimize and counter these losses and to maintain the business sustainability, do you have any views on how the regional carriers could be better placed in the coming years once the recovery in terms of the passenger travel starts?
Thank you. I'm not an airline expert. I would not claim to be one. I would leave this question for Simran. But my few words of wisdom. I mean, I actually was just doing a research on Cranfield University in the UK. just came out with a research, and I'll just read it out to you verbatim. They have actually said full service network carriers are likely to be major losers since the recovery into international markets will be slower and may face new competition with potential entry of new airlines in the home hub markets. So this is something which is going to be a turning point. Also, regional airlines were identified as possible short-term winners during the recovery period, as they could possibly help these full-service national carriers adjust their feeding capacity. The last point is low-cost carriers expected to concentrate in primary markets with possible entry in hub airports and general reduction in frequency at the route level. So this whole hub and spoke model, which I talk about, I spoke about earlier also about having basically a Guwahati which takes care of and smaller airports all around the northeast, and having the smaller airports feeding into it, and then finally into the metros, is the model which we see going ahead. And if you ever can research, if you see Sweden as an example, this is exactly what they've done, and they are, I mean, relatively doing better internally in terms of domestic aviation.
Okay, and any technological advances due to the changed traveling pattern you expect in terms of Saab introducing any new technology or working on R&D of any new offerings in the coming years?
So it's funny you ask, but I think Sweden has been been preparing for a pandemic as always. Our technologies minimize human interference. So if you take, for example, the remote tower, you give 2 people control of, let's say, 6 airports. You maintain social distance. You do not have many people. You minimize the need for more ATCOs. You can keep more airports open for emergencies, for whatever. So this technology, which we have serving all around the world right now, in the UK, in Australia, in the US, was made for a situation like this, where we don't want many people handling important things, important affairs, where people could be phased out due to the pandemic. So if you give a little more trust in technology and have a few people managing this technology, I think we can see a revolution in terms of keeping our aviation industry alive in India.
Excellent. Well, Mr. Varun, I'll be getting back to you because the topic is getting much more interesting than I expected it to be. So I'll be just switching on to Mr. Tabana for his views. But then I request you to be online so that we can parallelly do it in cohesion. Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you so much for your feedbacks. Mr. Tawana, I guess you joined late. I gave your introduction to the team, and we are all aware that what position you are holding and what exposure you have related to the aviation industry, from being a pilot to an operations guy to managing whole of the airlines now. So my first question to you would be, how do you feel to confront this pandemic just after completing the first year of operation? No doubt that you have achieved the profitability in the first 9 months. That's a very good news, even at this point of time. But then still, we would like to know, how do you see the industry growing and its future in the coming years, in the short term at least?
All right. Good morning, everybody. Firstly, my apologies for joining late. I didn't expect Bangalore would start picking traffic, which it did today. But it's good for business. Things are coming back to normal. That's how Bangalore used to be. So it took me almost half an hour extra than what I was used to today. So,
yeah, so my last 2 meetings with you have always been, you have always reached before time at Bangalore Airport. So, so that was a pleasant surprise to me this time.
yes, so that's interesting. So rightly, as you said, we are facing the biggest, one of the biggest challenges that the aviation industry has ever faced, and especially us being a startup who just completed 1 year of operations in January. We were ready to close that financial year in March at a very good note as a startup, but unfortunately March started to unravel its own plans, right? So we all are facing issues for sure. Everybody has a dent, but because we were in a stage wherein we had just started to expand, I think our dent is smaller, and that helps us in many way. And our parent group is very largely diversified into many other businesses. So, but aviation now was getting some foothold, unfortunately. Now, as I see, one thing is for sure that we all realize that this lockdown was a measure that we all adapted to prepare ourselves. And we all did. We all did manage well. People who survived through this this difficult time of not being able to fly. It has brought us a lot of changes in the way we think as an airline, and also what our passengers think when they want to travel with us. So it's not all that bad, and people are developing the faith to come back. Like today, we are running 2 flights at max capacity. So that's and when I say that, it's a tier 3 to tier 2 city connection, which you spoke about regional travel. So our flight to Kalaburgi, a small city in Karnataka, is both sides full today. So that's where the industry is moving. However, the costs remain a huge concern, and all the vendors, the lessors, and all financial institutes right now need to understand that the costs need to come out. They need to reduce. There are certain things which are in our control as an airline, which we can control, which is about maybe 30% of our fixed costs, which we have done. Unfortunately, the other 70% of our cost is something which we are either bound by a contract or is regulated by the government, like fuel. So there are plenty of things that needs to be looked at right now. So we've been talking to the Ministry of Civil Aviation to look at GST on the ATF. That would definitely benefit us, and some other measures regarding the import of aircraft, the time it takes to get certain regulatory approvals, and alternate businesses. Like we started Star Charters, and thankfully that has been doing well. We discovered that the 50-seat aircraft has got a good charter potential in India, because people used to hire 2 aircrafts, or aircraft used to do 2 shuttles to cater to a family marriage or a group of people traveling for religious reasons to different cities. So we are spending this time to reinvent ourselves, at the same time build some customer confidence. And I think that remains the key. Our customer must know that we care for them. We are taking all the possible precautions that we can at this point of time to make their journey as safe as it can be. And statistics have shown that restricting flight movements is not something that is benefiting the government or helping reduce the cases. It's just not. So I think the minimum they can just reduce these lockdown measures, the better it would be for the industry as a whole.
Okay. So how do you see the support which you're getting from the regulator, or because there, as you mentioned in the first half of your conversation, there are a couple of costs which can be managed. There are a couple of costs which is beyond your control, which includes the fuel, as well as I believe that includes the cost the contracts which you do with the lessors. Now, when considering the fact into consideration, and considering that fact into consideration, that flights are not in air since last 2 to 3 months at full potential, but the rentals are parallelly going on. So how supportive have been the lessors in this market with you guys, as well as your industry perspective with the other carriers which are operating in the same environment? Because that is a huge cost, I believe.
All right. So regarding the lessors, I think why our dent is smaller, because all our aircrafts are owned. So we thankfully are not paying any lease on any of our aircrafts. So that's a huge benefit that we are enjoying at this point of time. But I know a little about the industry, what's happening, because being where I am, I know what the lessors are doing. So it's not like the lessors are not supporting. they are rational about it, but at some point of time, they need the money as well. So they are willing to defer a lot of payments, give some waivers, but at the end of it all, they do need the money to come to them because their asset is being used. So that's what I know, and I know for a fact that the bigger airlines with better presence in some of the airlines in India hold a lesser's 80% of the portfolio or 80% of the fleet strength that the lessor has is deployed in India. So I'm sure they still want to make money, but they can manage with a little less. So that is happening for sure.
Yeah, Mr. Sampath Kumar, just picking a point from Mr. Tivana's view on the cost structures related to the fixed cost and the variable cost which they can manage and they can't manage. May I just have your views upon how is the GST on ATF impact in the coming years, possibly if the regulator decides to bring it under the GST? Do you think it will help airline to just address their losses in the long term as well as in the short term?
Yeah. Thank you for that question, Rupendra Singh. If you really look at, I think I responded to you in the first question. If you look at the total cost the airlines incur, about 45 to 50% goes towards the fuel. Okay. The second biggest component is the MRO side, the maintenance of the aircraft, and the third biggest component is about the salaries for the employees, the pilots and all. Certainly, the GST component in India is so high. Definitely, any reduction, as Mr. Simran was mentioning, is going to contribute for the profitability of the airlines. I certainly agree with most of the speakers who talk on the subject. The airlines are in very, very bad shape, and the pandemic has really caused havoc to the survival of even the largest aircraft in the world, and of course, Indian airlines are also not different. I certainly feel that at least for next 12 to 18 months, the government of India should consider giving a GST reduction, if possible, maybe the zero GST. That would really help them to save some of the the extra pie that they are paying, and thereby the airlines can be saved to perform them in the future. Okay, certainly I believe that reduction in GST is very vital at this stage, because the percentage of GST is very high. This will really help the airlines to survive in the market. In terms of the duration, it's very difficult to say, but I would say that 12 to 18 months would definitely help them, so that they will be able to come out of the crisis and start looking at building their capabilities further. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Mr. Peter, just combine the two feedbacks which Mr. Tivana and Mr. Sampath Kumar has given. I'd like to ask you that since Mr. Tivana said that they have, in this course of pandemic, they have observed that there is an adjacent market for the business aviation, particularly the charter market, which they have explored, and that is doing pretty good. As per the scenario which is happening in India related to the spiritual travel or any sort of short trips with a group, those type of things happening. So these adjacent market is growing somehow even in the scenario of pandemics. Similar is the case with the drones market. So where do you see the drones market going with respect to the increased focus of DGCA on the air surveillance?
Okay, thank you for that question. So we are seeing indeed similar trends, for example, in North America, where chartering private jets or GA is definitely going up much quicker than what is happening on the commercial side. Talking about drones specifically, so I'm not an expert in drones, but obviously on the surveillance side, we are seeing a lot of things there as well. I think you need to make a distinction between let's say commercial drones and then obviously the private drones. So private drones, I don't think in this matter in regards to surveillance is even a topic. It's just more about safety and making sure that you have a clear separation between privately flown drones and what is happening at airports or commercially operated flights. Obviously, when you have companies like Amazon using drones more and more, for example, to share logistics support between their airports and to do stock exchange and stuff like that between, let's say, the logistics centers. That obviously becomes an topic where we need to make sure that we then increase surveillance capability to then make sure that those things are flowing efficiently and safely. Okay, so that's briefly on the drone. If I may just quickly elaborate on some of the comments that we made with regards to costs and infrastructure. So Mr. Varun made comments about, for example, remote towers. That's also the level that we at Aviation are very much looking at to provide surveillance as a service. So historically, in order to have surveillance in the airspace, you obviously need to install equipment, you need to have radars, primary, secondary radars, ground-based ADSB, which obviously has a certain investment cost to it. So there's a capital expenditure to be made there, and then we have those assets on the books. The model that everyone is applying now locally, so we have 17 ASPs that are using our data now, is basically to go away from that model and to really go for a service model. So this means instead of having to do an investment into buying equipment, you are basically buying data that is supplied to you by Orion in a very safe and EASA certified way that basically makes that you don't have to do any upfront investment. And the way we are, let's say, using that charging model is that it's also being charged as on a flight hour basis. So that means you only would pay for that surveillance based on what is actually being flown into your airspace. So we can imagine that ASPs and navigation service providers that are using our data now obviously are paying a lot less than what they would have in the pre-COVID traffic scenarios. So that means that our model in that sense is following exactly that, to make sure that we reduce the cost of that service, surveillance service, and it goes together with the traffic. So remember, the traffic goes up, then obviously then the cost will go up, but then the financial model of the navigation service provider itself is also included in that. So that allows that type of organization to be more flexible with regards to spending and also with regards to their cash position. I just wanted to elaborate a little bit on the cost and infrastructure side of the discussion as well.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good insight. Mr. Varun, I would just like to extend one question which is coming. Is that is Saab's focus more towards the regional carriers, or you're also focusing towards the carriers which are which have a pan-India big operations? How do you? The question basically is, even the regional carriers like the Star Air, someday we can expect in the next 4 to 5 years that they would be having some pan-India presence. So the products which Saab is offering, which is very much suited to the airports and the regional carriers, will that be equally suited in the coming years for them in the future?
Yes. So Saab products are, so we are an aerospace and defense company. 10% of our portfolio, which is aerospace, looks mostly after the airports, the surveillance of the airports. You can have vehicle locators, you have ADSP units, you have multilateration systems, you have the ASNGCS, which is the surface movement guidance software, which you see on about 11 airports in India. So we target all kinds of airports. What we are talking about this time though are targeting smaller airports to build up from where we are right now. And hence, I brought on the example of the remote tower, which we are looking for, and all airlines will be able to benefit from that if once we are able to get those 100 or so airports that were supposed to be built up. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah. So one more extension to that answer which you have given is that as you said that you're basically, if you can see that the model is basically a hub and a spoke, in which instead of operating from 10 different airports, it is concentrating at one airport, so the decision making could be more efficient, as well it can be more diversified also. And possibly what I think is it's a good proposition even for the smaller airports, because that reduces the cost of their operations as well,
Exactly.
which is fixed cost.
Yeah, so for example, the RCS scheme, if I'm not mistaken, has a 50 crore budget or something to build these airports. Now, our remote tower is like a fraction of the cost of building a regular tower, which takes a lot of money. So if you want to open more airports and you want to allocate more money into different things, you put these towers at these airports and you control it from the hub basically. Um, Doing this enables you to have many more airports open more time. And for example, in the northeast itself, there's so many brownfield airports which are lying empty, and also because of the proximity to our very friendly neighbors, people don't want to be staffed there. So having this technology set in will, change the face of these far-flung areas.
Yeah. So, Mr. Tiwana, just taking a cue from Varun's answer, in which possibly what he's suggesting is that with the new software technologies which is being evolving, and which Saab is providing currently and plans to provide in the coming years, as per my experience, which we had with the Star Air, was that the slots were always a constraint at the congested airports, right? So that was the major constraint at the airports. But then parallelly, we are just being optimistic on the fact that the pandemic will subside and the traffic will evolve. And with a concept which Varun said that it is developing, possibly do you see that the number of slots opening up and a decongestion happening somehow, and airport are in a much better position to help even the regional carriers apart from the bigger airlines?
Right. So, see, slots is something that the airport earns with, right? So they would rather give it to a plane that brings 200 passengers than us bringing 50 passengers in the same time slot. So yeah, that's true, and we understand that everybody is in this for business. So there will always be a resistance for allowing smaller planes into busy airports. That's what's happening in India, unfortunately. However, if you look at some models in the West, you will see that the kind of planes that we fly, the ERJs, you'll find that in US there are airports where the airlines are doing the hub and spoke model, and they are doing more regional departures, and maybe after 10 regional jets landing, there's one bigger, wider body taking off from that airport, and they have been pretty successful in doing that. So technology will play a vital role in that, because consider Bangalore airport itself. Now they have 2 runways, right? So I'm sure they can accommodate a lot more traffic coming in. With the newer Navi Mumbai airport coming up, we expect that 2 runways will be operational there as well. So I'm sure that with time, and if this reduced time with the current pandemic can be used in building these infrastructures, and the technologies associated to allow such kind of operations, would be really great. And like Varun mentioned about smaller airports, so we are targeting to build 100 airports. However, the facilities and the software environment at those airports still remain a concern. A lot of state governments have.
Is it because of the investment? Is it because of the investment bill of the government, or is it some other reason?
I don't think it's because of investment, because there are cases wherein you will see that governments have built runways as long as 11,000 feet as a startup airport. For example, the airport I mentioned, Kalaburgi, that runway is about 10,000 feet. So that means it can really take on a narrow body at any time, but essential instrument aids are not there. So just yesterday, we both us and Alliance Air could not land there, came back. So I think the infrastructure means that the radio aids and the passenger facilitation softwares and better management of assets on ground uh, will will be required. So it's probably better to build a slightly smaller airport, but equip it better so that it can provide a sustainable travel. Because if you open a new airport, the people are not used to air travel there in a new city. So when you start flying with them, they would want a reasonable certainty that once they buy a ticket, they will reach their destination, or at least the flight will land and pick them up. So that still remains a concern, and most of the Udan airports face that challenge. So there's a lot of cancellations which happen just because the airport infrastructure, not in terms of the runway available, but in terms of the radio aids or other facilities, is unable to accommodate the one or two flights that they have to in a day. So
Okay. With the
not really a concern. It's more about planning.
And do you see that this question is for both you and Mr. Varun? Is that you mentioned also that due to the pandemic, we have learned two things, very important things, that regions which have a domestic exposure high are much better placed than the regions which have international more, like the Dubai's, where it is more of a transit hub for the international passenger than having domestic traffic for them. So talking about US, particularly North America, coming out this side to China and then India. So we have a significant amount of domestic traffic which is in place, and parallelly it contributes a heavy chunk in which is coming out from the regional traffic. Not only coming from the metro, it is coming from the regional traffic. Do you think that increasing trend of a big push would be there for the regional connectivity in the coming years, owing to the fact that domestic demand is the only savior in these type of pandemics or the odd situations?
Mr. Chinman, please, I will leave it to you.
Yeah, so I feel the demand is already there. I don't think that because of the pandemic, whatever happens to the international market, it will instigate some kind of growth on domestic markets. I don't foresee that happening, but for sure, if all airlines start focusing more on the domestic regional routes, it will inspire some kind of response from the people. And but these regional routes, they take time to develop. So if we start concentrating on a route, it's minimum of 1 year before you start that the people start trusting you enough to take a flight than the conventional way that they were used to travel, maybe by road. So that's I think it's going to be more about the execution of a plan, wherein development of regional routes, you decide the route that you want to develop and then invest into it, invest into passenger confidence, and then provide a service that they appreciate even as a regional travel.
Any
Yeah,
partnership model you are expected to come in the coming years? Big airlines partnering with the regional carriers and operating on the hub and spoke model, or developing it?
See,
Any type of code shares or the airline agreements happening?
Right. So I personally feel that aviation has a way, and more or less around the world, it follows the same trend. So it's not like we have never seen a country being so totally different than the rest of the world, that the aviation totally works differently, right? So we know hub and spoke and partnering with the bigger carriers and regional being a feeder is a popular concept, and I'm sure that sooner or later we will evolve into that, and that's I personally feel that's a very good way to go forward. Yeah, if busier airports can get a lot of people in rather than flying wider body, whatever any airline can feed into a wide body, that's worth it.
Yeah. Mr. Varun, as we see that from the airlines feedback which is coming, is that regulators importance would be much more higher than it was there in the previous year. I'm not defying the fact that they are one of the key stakeholders, but then their importance in the overall aviation ecosystem will furthermore play a vital role in shaping the future of aviation in India. How do you see that? What do you foresee as the one of the few constraints which are there, which if that roadblocks could be removed, the pace of recovery could be made faster in terms of technology or in terms of any policy decisions?
I have to completely agree with you. The regulator workload is definitely going to increase because people like Saab, Aviation, we all are coming up with new technologies, and to be able to change the mindset of not only the regulators but the users as well. For example, air traffic controllers takes a lot of work. And for example, even if you just take the remote tower, for example, it is, instead of looking out of a window, you're looking at screens, right? There's no difference. I mean, it's exactly the same thing, but you're still looking at screens. You have not changed anything. So now, different regulatory bodies might interpret that in different ways. It took us a long time in Sweden to convince them that there is no change, and after a lot of trials and practice runs, then finally it was approved by a regulator. I feel that the DGCA, kudos to them. I mean, they have been accepting of all the new technologies. For when we introduced our ASMGCS software in the Delhi airport, and the other hardware as well, it took again it was a leap for them also to introduce the technology, but now it's commonplace. So there, for getting new technology in, there will be hurdles, but I don't think that it will stop us, but it might delay us, which we see in India, we see it in other developing countries as well. My only hope and want from the government is just to expedite these kinds of thought changes, so we can actually embrace new technologies in this country. We could be the leading forefront in Asia, but right now we are lagging behind because we do tend to nobody wants to stick their neck out for new technologies in India. They don't want to put their jobs on a line saying that why should we do this when we are happy with the old system. Yeah, so that is my opinion on this. Mr. Singh, on you.
Did somebody drop on?
Yeah, so my video just got disconnected somehow. Sorry for that. Yeah, so yeah, that's a good. So one more additional question to that, Warren, to you is that is it only Saab which is in this market, or possibly the push is coming from other players also who are your competitors? Because anything coming as a new concept from one particular organization or a technology company becomes which has to be laid down in the coming years.
Sorry, I think I lost you there in the middle, but your question was that are more people pushing for something?
Yeah, I'll just repeat. The question is it only Saab who is in some other competitor of yours also who is parallelly pushing this concept in the aviation industry?
Okay, I'm losing you quite a few times, Mr. Singh, but I think I got the gist of your question. It is so Saab started this in 2006, and we were the first people we came up with the idea basically, and I mean, the last couple of years, a few of our competitors have also come into this domain, but we have been pushing this in India for the last 5 years. For all the chairmen, we've been trying to. The RFP came out like 2-3 times already with AI, but it was retracted. So there is a discussion which has been going on, and we really hope they do it, because in the end of the day, if there is no competition, then I mean, why give competitive equipment to India, there has to be healthy competition, or else the prices will be too high and we'll be getting sub-optimal products.
No, that's good to know news. Mr. Devana, one more question which is coming, which has come, is that how do you what to do to ensure the passenger confidence back in business for tier 2 and tier 3 cities? I'm asking for tier 2 and tier 3 because regional push is more towards these ones, apart from the main focus for tier 1s. So that's definitely included. But then how to increase or catalyze the demand, or what is the expectation in this? How will it develop?
We are operating regional routes now, some of them monopoly for about a year now. So if you look at how Udan was planned, was the Udan scheme was to give us 3 years to develop demand into certain regional routes which are not already existing. So with 1 year of operations, we were probably starting to get some passenger confidence when this health crisis started. So I think if anything, we have definitely gone back in time to probably lost 50% of our work from the first year that we did on these routes. So inspiring confidence, there are measures which the government has suggested. We are all doing that, providing face masks and the face shields. I think that is the most important precaution right now. We also provide hand sanitizers to all the passengers who travel with us, small sachets like kit that we give to every passenger. So I feel everybody is scared. Everybody who flies is scared of themselves and possibly for the people traveling with them. So what we try and tell people is that the risk of catching the infection in the air is really, really less. And if everybody wears a mask and the other person, everybody else in the plane is wearing a mask, that further reduces the chances of catching it on flight. And I don't think there is any case so far which has clearly established the fact that somebody caught the virus just by buying a ticket to fly. So that's kind of the message that needs to go out there, that air travel still remains the safest way to travel between cities. Much more safer than traveling in a car for a 5 or 10 hours ride. So I think that's what we are trying to communicate through our agents, through our sales teams, and trying to offer this kind of, maybe there's a grapevine that once a person travels, he talks back to his family, and 10 more people get to know that it's safe. And
yeah,
I think
true.
that
Because this particular push of the safe travel was first initiated by IATA, but then I believe not talking on the part of the moderator, but then becoming as a passenger, I would say that airlines push towards this safe travel and the prone of how the infection, the chances of getting infection in the air travel has not been widely publicized by the airline than the regulatory body. That's what my view is. I'm okay if anybody contradicts on that, because ITA has been for the longest time pushed on this particular thing with the concept of HEPA filters and how the circulation is happening. But airline also promoting these type of activities, I can't see it happen even now. Very limited number of airlines are doing it. Not even the bigger ones are doing it. So because that would be the main confidence booster for the passenger to travel. And once the travel returns back, and there's no turning back. As you said in the starting, that demand is already there. It's just that people are restraining to travel. Just the level of confidence when it comes, both the leisure as well as the corporate travel starts. But then there's some push required from the airline side also. There are two aggressive ones.
Right. So, when it all started, we didn't really know ourselves whether whether it does transfer or it doesn't transfer. So there were so many contradictory reports coming out of the WHO itself. So first it was that transfers through contacts and not airborne, and now it's maybe a little bit of airborne is also causing the virus to transfer. So because of the lack of uncertainty, and I think the airlines would want to focus on statistics rather than marketing what is safe and what isn't. So I think we are pretty much on that track with the data of 2 months from the 25th of May onwards, since we started flying. Everybody is gathering that data, how many people traveled in the air, how many were detected positive after, if the airline does get to know that. So a lot of airports, including Bangalore, is doing a arrival test. So all that is happening, and the data is being maintained. I think once that data comes out and points out that the possibility of catching infection is less than 1%, that's when the airlines would aggressively start publicizing this a little better. Because I can say that for our airline, but I don't know what's happening in the other airlines. So certainly, if somebody from the Ministry of Civil Aviation can take this up, that would be a good idea. Gather that data together along, and I'm sure that all the airports would support this cause. And as a joint task force which specifically focuses on increasing passenger reliability and confidence, I think that can be done, but it needs to be somebody other than just one airline.
Yeah. On the adjacent side, how's the helicopter business? You definitely mentioned it, but then I just want to explore it a bit further. How's the business been on the helicopter side, which forms the part of your fleet, and you yourself being a pilot? How do you see this business growing up as an adjacent market?
Right. So we own and operate 3 Airbus helicopters. We've been doing that for almost 12 years now. Business had been really good before all this started, and we recently had another web conference regarding helicopters specifically. But the industry is divided into an onshore and an offshore. So we operate onshore. The offshore people providing services to the oil rigs are near normal. I would say the bigger companies like Pawan Hans and Global Vectra, majority of their assets being deployed for offshore purposes, they are probably near normal. But people who are onshore, like ourselves, we used to provide a lot of charters, we used to do a lot of utility work and corporate travel. All that has taken a bad hit. So I think, and it's so bad that probably a single-digit commercial flight since it all opened is where we are in about 3 months. Thankfully, these assets on these charters like ours, for instance, they are all owned assets, so we don't really have a very high fixed cost on these assets, but there is a cost which is accumulating. So we would definitely need better business in the future to try and cover the costs that we are incurring right now. So and I feel that once the airlines inspire some confidence, only then the helicopters can take place. And helicopters usually, they don't have a huge range to fly. So you fly a distance which by road you can cover in probably 5 hours. And considering that you cater for the niche clients, high value individuals, so they have very good cars to travel that 5 hours distance with the driver that they know is safe. So that's what is happening, and I think it's just a matter of time that such data is published, and we are able to use it to inspire some confidence initially in the airlines, and then moving to the helicopters.
Okay, thanks for that. Mr. Varun, one quick question to you. Do you see that the delay in the international sectors opening up, will it in some way impact the technology company operating in India on the fields which you are providing the solutions, or is it regardless of that, even if the international traffic starts late, it doesn't matter to the technology companies?
Not at all. Our business model is not based on any particular travel or for international or domestic. It's just based on numbers and airports. So the better the country is doing in terms of in any terms, I mean, aviation is correlated to that. If the GDP goes up, if the economy is doing well, people will travel, and as the because thanks to COVID or whatever, unfortunately from it, it is being tending towards good. Regional airline will play a bigger part now from now on, and I think Saab is going to be playing a big role now in different parts of India, setting up cost-effective airports, as well as Mr. Simon when he was talking about helicopters. So small airports in Norway are controlled by the capital city through these remote towers for helicopters, where and these airports are on cliffs and very difficult terrain places. So again, the numbers matter is not from the international side. It's going to be all regional, and as long as the country and the GDP and the aviation industry is doing well, we will be looking good as well.
That's good to know. Good to know. Mr. Subhat, just wanted your considering all the panelists who have discussed their opinion about the recovery. I somehow, in the rush of the question, missed your views upon the recovery which we can expect in terms of aviation. It would be good to hear from you because
Okay.
you have done quite a good amount of work related to the books you have authored and related to the aviation sector in India. So it would be helpful for us to just figure out how we can expect we can get over with this pandemic trauma.
Actually, Simran said that nowadays the regional connectivity is improving, and I think like in the past 3 months we had seen a huge number of potentially charter operations as we started doing international flight operations, leasing 320, 321 aircraft. Nowadays, people are believing more to travel by air rather than traveling by train or by car because the possibility of getting affected by virus is more. Same time, air ambulance service are increased drastically in past 3 months, where we used to do hardly 4 to 5 flights in a month. Nowadays, we are doing 20 to 25 flights of air ambulance every month. So demands are huge. We are in short of aircraft in market nowadays. Even for cargo, the cargo demands have increased drastically. That's why the other airlines like SpiceJet and all, even bigger airlines like Emirates, they're converting their entire A380 aircraft into cargo operations. The demands are huge, and now people started trusting that aviation is the safest way to travel compared to any other mode. They don't want to spend hours on trains and all, and nothing is more important than life. People earlier used to give more value to money and all, but now this pandemic had given a reality face that money have no value when it comes to life. So that's why now we can see the future. There will be people will be choosing only flight service who were flying like traveling by first class, second class, and all. So the future is really very good, and as the regional connectivity is opening up very fast, so there will be huge potential in these small cities for the employment as well. People don't have to travel back to metro cities to get a job. Earlier, people used to travel to metro cities or used to travel abroad to get a job in aviation industry. But the way we are going forward, there are huge potential for getting employment in small cities as well. And as I closely work with the Air Deccan and Air Odisha for Udan routes, we had seen the potential of the small routes like Jagdalpur, Ambikapur, and Bilaspur. The demands were like we had opened the booking for 3 months and a 3 month of choco block, the entire routes. The demand was so high because normally we have people like from the royal family, for the background of ministry or the IAS, IPS people. They regularly travel, but because of no connectivity, they have to travel by road, which take more than 10 to 12 hours for them. If we can give them the opportunity to fly, definitely they will opt to fly down rather than going by roads. So I think future is like getting more shape and getting more lucrative for aviation industry. So that's my point of view in this thing, and I'm expecting that going forward, as we can say, Jet Airways is reviving. There are new companies like Fly Big and other airlines are coming up in India. So there will be huge potential in this industry. So that's my view. Over to you, Mr. Singh.
Yeah. So there's a new question which is coming, and it is okay. It is for me. The question is, how will the airline and the aviation adopt and recover with a final conclusion to that. So I just like to address this question. Whosoever asked this, and I'll just try to put my views on that. Is that the VFR passengers number will represent the only area where there is a release of pent-up demand. The notion that the traffic will recover to previous levels by the end of 2021, which most of the agencies are saying, is greatly, I would say, a misplaced optimism. After a great financial crisis in 2008, if we take the example of that also, which will be seen to be by far and less damaging economically, it took until 2016, possibly 8 long years, to recover back at the 2007 levels. I'm talking about the intra-European flights. So issues is possibly not about lifting of the restrictions, but also how the passenger concerns and the need to demonstrate the sanity, virus-free airports and the flights, which has significant implications for testing and the communicating the results. Cannot be done at the airport, as the need to rule out the infection before even the arrival at the airport. So the availability and the accommodation and the restaurants and destination given in the estimation seen in the sector 2, and the pace of its recovery is possibly will be the governing point of shaping the future. My conclusion, possibly how will it evolve, would be we are still several months away from reaching the turning point or the inflection point to the 2019 level. The future shape and the size of the aviation industry in the near and the medium term will be, I would say, it will be markedly different from what it was in 2019. The travel patterns is expected to change, the way the airlines are functioning, the way the airports are functioning, the way the passenger travel has been in the past, and the way it has evolved due to new regulatory measures related to the safety and the security features, which has been laid down by the regulator in purview of pandemic, is expected to change the travel pattern altogether. So it will be very different from the 2019 levels, as it has been asked from the question. Future growth will be slower than previously expected. That's what the range, because if we see that ITA also predicted that the recovery to the 2019 levels would be happening around 2023 or 2022, 2023. But then the article and the publications which have been released by ITA in the recent month, in the last month of June, last, it was July, sorry, it was July, that the recovery to the 2019 level is expected to be around 2024. Bit pessimistic, I would say, but then it is possibly they are also predicting that for the shorter haul routes, the recovery will be much faster. For the longer hauls, domestic as well as the international, the recovery will be pretty slow. So the range of traditional economic, behavioral and policy factors will impact in the near term restart phase and over the medium and long term. So I believe I have answered the question which the gentleman have asked. Coming back to the question which I have just received is for Mr. Ramana. Mr. Ramana, as we have seen, and as per the feedbacks and the recommendation which I've got from the panelists, cargo is gradually taking a prime eye in terms of aviation. Airports as well as the airline would be focusing on them. Any significant shift in terms of business model is expected in terms of cargo industry for aviation?
No, sorry, I didn't hear you. Can you come again?
So my question was, the question which is coming is that everybody feels that cargo has been the biggest role player in this pandemic, and it would evolve as a front face of aviation in the coming years. Possibly what the question is there any business model changes expected in terms of cargo in aviation?
See, as I explained earlier, the cargo, what we are talking about is an airport to airport model. See, the real money, the business model should evolve here, a model from pickup to delivery. See, the problem, we are talking about how to maximize the belly space. Today, if you take a smaller aircraft, literally you don't get more than 500 kgs on your belly space. When you have 320, you get maximum 2 to 3 tons. This model with a cargo, with a belly space is not sustainable, even though it can be a good other revenue for you. Now, coming back to look at the cargo business as is, what we are saying today. It's a question of how effectively the e-commerce is going to drive the whole business model. If you really look into it, that India had only one cargo airline, which is called Blue Dart, which started way back in 70s. Okay, and the key driver for it to the business model was to connect goods from the smaller parcels, from smaller towns or the cities to the metros, where they had a customs clearance. Because in those days, the customs clearance was not in all the airports. And that is where it was able to drive the value chain of the price point of the yield of almost $1 per kg. Today, that the only way that can be done is through the increase in sale through e-commerce or the moderation what has been created by the government or the GST. Because with the GST coming in, the utility of a warehousing at the respective state or the respective location has been removed. So the cargo market is going to be highly determined based on the requirement of the customer. Let's take an example. And the time, how exactly how fast the delivery has to happen. See, as I explained to you, the key delivery or the key person who is going to use air cargo is going to be a guy who has a time definite delivery commitment. Now, how many places we have a time definite delivery commitment? When you, as an individual, how many times you had used for a time definite delivery? That I need this tomorrow, other than in business. So effectively, a cargo is a B2B business. Now, the B2B business is highly linked to the company's ability to generate more business. Now, when you're saying the GDP is contracted for the last 3 months, 4 months, and when you are saying, I'm sorry to say that even Sumit was telling there is a huge cargo opportunity, what we are talking about is the bottom of the value chain, which is the airport to airport cargo movement. As I told you, an onion and potato cannot be transported through a cargo. It has to come by a truck. So the challenge is how exactly the value chain the requirement is going to change. Today, if you're saying that mobile is going to be the top, it's going to grow at say 20%, 30% over the next 3 years. Yes, mobile phones can move into your cargo, air cargo movement, because it's able to spend that 10 rupees, 50 rupees additional cost, whereas onions and potatoes cannot do it. So, which challenges we are talking about the bottom line of the value chain in the cargo business, and it's going to be linked directly to the number of flights you are going to operate. So I don't see a major flip the cargo unless you open up the regional cargo system, where a guy in Ambikapur, I'm just giving an example of a place called Ambikapur or Kulbarga, the guy can get a mobile tomorrow in the morning if you order today. So the regional cargo will work, but on a basis, the trunk route cargo will not be that much growth potential will be there. I hope that answered my views on it.
Yeah. More yeah. My next question would be with Mr. Peter. If you can share some traffic levels which you have seen in terms of recovery regions or globally, your view on that, it would be much appreciated, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Singh. So, as we are earlier seeing global ADSB data, that means that we are capturing all of the aircraft that are emitting in the 90 gigahertz, right? So we're basically seeing everything that is flown. So if you allow me to maybe present 2-3 slides on that, I can share some of those graphics so you can see, as we've been discussing, right? No one really has a crystal ball, but I think data in this exercise and to make decisions with regards to recovery is very, very critical. So the more data you can have, the better decisions you will be able to make, right? So that's why I think the data sets that we have available, and I'll share some examples with you, if you allow me to share. I can show you 2-3 slides that are showing basically the level of traffic now compared to the beginning of the year. So I can quickly show you. We should see this chart now, I believe. Are you seeing my chart, Mr. Singh?
No,
Yeah.
I can't. Yeah, it's visible now. Yeah.
Okay, so this is, as I mentioned, this is all the ADS-B traffic that we are seeing through our satellites. So that means that you can really see per region exactly what the difference is in air traffic. So you obviously see that North America and Europe are let's say, growing or recovering at a quicker rate. But obviously also have to do with summer season in Europe. But to give you an idea, we're currently in terms of movements, only between brackets 31% down compared to the beginning of the year, and in number of flight hours, we are 86% down. So that means we're operating close to 60% or just about 60% of traffic compared to the beginning of the year. So again, no one has a crystal ball, that's for sure, and we're seeing different recovery rates depending on the region. That is obviously directly linked to the state that the specific region is in with regards to COVID-19. But I just wanted to share some of these data points because we are seeing a recovery, although indeed it's going slow. And again, for example, South America obviously still has, and Asia Pacific more in general, still has levels that are down maybe 70%, 75% compared to baseline. But globally, the number of flight hours, we are only 36% down compared to the beginning of the year. So that's just one data point I wanted to share with the group.
Yeah, that's an interesting stuff. So I know, Mr. Tiwari, I'm bothering you with good amount of questions, but I'm helpless with this because it is coming for you, so I can't help you much with this. So my next question, my next question with you would be, how do you see that any business model changes expected happening in terms of slot structuring at the airport, since the airlines are operating at a 45% capacity now, which would gradually increase. But then considering the scenario, if it persists for close to next 2 to 3 months, any good news from the airports whom you were struggling to get the slots, because airports nowadays are struggling for getting the passengers. So anything you have observed as a flexibility which has been shown from the airport?
I think yes, the slots are a little easy to get now. Definitely.
That's a good news.
Yeah, that's easy, but filling up the planes for these new slots still remains a challenge. Yeah. So, but we have seen that the bigger airports are a little more relaxed in giving the slots, at least for like a temporary slot, because everybody wants the wide bodies to come in as soon as the inbound international flights are coming back to near normal. But yeah, we are trying to do the best we can right now.
Any aspect or any challenges being faced in terms of passenger experience, because owing to the fact of pandemic that the airside congestion has reduced, but then in parallel what we are seeing that the social distancing measures which has to be taken on the terminal side is bothering airport too, because in the same area of 8 square feet, the number of passengers which they were catering then and which they are catering now is significantly less. So the congestion which is there, which is developing inside the terminal, is now getting a problem for the airport. So I believe that in the coming months, when the traffic revives and if this situation persists of ensuring that the social distancing should be taken care of at the terminal side, do you see that it will impact the passenger experience of your passengers, of your loyal passengers which travel with you quite often?
I think it impacts everybody who is traveling in any of the airlines. So the passenger experience obviously has gone down. I'm sure the airports have lost some of the ancillary revenue they used to make by opening shops and the restaurants. Like Bangalore was really good at doing all that. So I'm sure the airports have lost significant chunk of their revenues per month because of these measures. And in the future, if the demand comes back to maybe 50% of what it was, I think we all are. I think the airports will be able to, and it's not like the demand is going to come back to the same levels anytime soon. We don't expect that happening. So whatever the current infrastructure is, I think the social distancing would continue to be maintained. It should not be an issue. And customers, I think one thing that we realize is that whenever a government puts restrictions, it's very verbal. They will even take it out on a newspaper, or the news will highlight that there are more restrictions put by the state. For instance, the latest restrictions put by West Bengal. However, when those restrictions are taken out, that is not really communicated to the general public. So I think something that needs a little work on maybe the state government.
More required now.
Right. So everybody, even the people who are willing to fly, are kind of scared because of the unknown. They don't know what kind of quarantine regulations are in place of destination, what kind of stamp they're going to be having on their hands, and all that. So, so it's a little uncomfortable because the scenario is uncertain. And nobody has clarity what's going to happen if they take a flight ticket. So I think that needs to go. All the states need to work together to take out a plan, or the ministry, which the ministry is already doing. But we are more fast in putting communicating the restrictions than communicating what has opened up. So maybe that needs a little work.
Yeah. So my last question to you would be: is there any restrictions in terms of the baggages which is happening for the passenger? Because initially it has been that it was a restriction in terms of how many baggages you'll be carrying with the airline. Has that something to do with the regional carrier or a big airline operator, or is it same all across? Anything that sort of coming?
So the government did restrict the bag to one bag and made it a 20 kg bag in place of a 15 kg. So all the airlines obviously had restrictions for that, not only because of commercial reasons, but also because of the weight that you can carry in the aircraft. And now if you give free luggage allowance to everybody 5 kgs extra, that definitely increases your aircraft's weight and sometimes even the cargo space. So, but overall, because we are not flying at max capacities, it's been working out okay. But sooner or later, I think the airline need to be given the freedom to decide what kind of baggage they want to allow as per the aircraft that they operate.
That's a good news. Okay, I believe with this I come to the conclusion that the questions which there are almost all addressed, and that too well within time. And thank you for all of you for this. And I like to invite Mr. Sumit to just share the vote of thanks to the panelists. And thanks for being so much helpful from my side, at least.
Thanks so much, Nitin, for giving your valuable time and being a moderator for us today. Okay. And adding to Mr. Simran's word that till January we were trying to short out the time that we should reduce timing for check-in, boarding, and all. And right now, after 8 months, we are back to the square one. Same way, we have to reach the airport like international flying 4-5 hours before so that we can check in. So a lot of confusion are there with the passenger about the quarantine rules. Even like being a part of aviation, even we are getting confused to flight particular destination. So there are a lot of confusion going on in the market. And once the government will come up with a clear picture, the things will be more easy for passengers to opt for it. So I would like to thank everyone, Mr. Peter, Mr. Ananta, Mr. Simran, Mr. Nipen, Mr. Varun, and Mr. Sampathi to join us today and give your input. And I'm pretty sure like more than 100 people joined us today and had gained a lot of knowledge from this meet. Thanks a lot to everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.